Well, now we get to deal with inflation. As most economists, we assumed it away up to this point. Now we get to be real finance folks and say, you know what, we probably ought to take into account some inflation. There's a big reason for that. Biggest reason why we want to do it is the weighted average cost of capital is a nominal rate. It assumes that all the cash flows and everything else has inflation embedded in it. And if we haven't actually taken into account inflation, well, we're just a little off. That means we should adjust our cash flow estimates to reflect expected inflation as well. So, what does that mean in particular? Well, we're going to be looking at the revenues. Revenues, as long as we can reasonably pass on any higher costs to our customers, we should be adjusting revenues for inflation or expected inflation. Our expenses, as long as they are not fixed by a contract, are probably going to be affected by inflation as well. The third one on this list is a little odd because people think of working capital, hey, wait, we did that one in initial cash flow and in terminal cash flow only once, so we should just adjust the one, right? And the answer is not really, because, for instance, in the example of full of VIT, we invested in some inventory. Over time, even though I invested $6,000 in inventory, and the idea is we invested at $6,000, and then when we're paid the $6,000 for the product, we're going to reinvest that in inventory. But the problem is the inventory gets more expensive over time. So it cost me $6,000 up front. It's going to cost me $6,000 and some inflation to replace it over time. And so we're going to be making the adjustments to the cash flow for the difference that inflation makes over time, and then at the end we'll liquidate our inventory at the higher rate, not at the lower rate that we invested in initially. So working capital is going to take a little bit of thought. Finally, and this is the one that really makes for some oddness here, depreciation, because of the way it works, we book a certain price at a historical amount, and then the amount that we take off year to year to year is based on the historical numbers, which are in historical dollars, which means we should never adjust depreciation for inflation. So take that into consideration as we move forward. Now, having said that, it would be nice to nail this all down with an example. Well, lucky for you, we had some examples we've been working on. So let's tweak our earlier examples to adjust for inflation by 2% per year. We're going to assume that everything has been estimated in today's dollars. Let me make one exception to that, and that is salvage. If we're expecting salvage of a certain amount in year 5 or in year n, whatever year n is, we're assuming that that's in the future dollar, not in times $0. We're assuming that everything else was disclosed in time $0. With those rules now set up, 2%, the only thing we're not adjusting is salvage, and we're assuming that all numbers are in times 0 numbers. Let's move out and do the examples, adjusting them for inflation. We're going to start where we left off for a reason. And that is because we actually had to work through the story problem already, and we translated that really nicely. So I'm going to actually start this out by saying what my assumption is. Assume 2.00% inflation per year. By the way, you may have noticed that that one was pre-formatted and yours wasn't. And the reason for that is because I've already recorded this video 2 other times, and I had problems and had to just trash it and start all over again, okay, if you want to know the truth. So 3rd time's the charm, right? So here we go. Let me go down and grab the headings. So I'm going to zip down to the bottom now and grab some headings. T1 through T5. And then I'm going to move up just outside of inventory and say, and you're probably going to say, what in the heck are you doing that for? These are initial cash flows. Note that all of the initial cash flows occur, let me scroll down just a sec. All of them occur in T0. So all of these are actually in times $0 anyway. What in the heck are you making adjustments for? And again, remember, because we have our 6,000 in inventory, I produce fertilizer, and then the next year when I'm replacing my fertilizer that I had here, my inputs, with new inventory to make more fertilizer, I have to pay 6,000, which I've already invested, so I'm just replacing that. So somebody's paid me the 6,000. I'm now using that to buy more inventory. Wait, the price went up. Why did it go up? Inflation. Oh, so how much more do I have to pay? Well, I'm going to go up here and say equal 6,000 times parenthesis 1 plus 2%, hit my F4 key, close parenthesis, enter. So what it's doing, it's looking over here, that whatever's right next to it, multiplying it by 1.02%. You can go back up on here and pull it across, because it will just look at the last one and multiply it by 2% all the time, because we've fixed that last address as an absolute address. And again, this is still my time 0 initial investment. That hasn't changed. Everything else will change. This one doesn't. But in the next year, I'm going to have to actually increase my inventory investment by $120 and so on. So I'm going to pop down to my operating cash flow. I'm going to do the same thing with the headings. So I'm going to copy my headings T1 through T5. Then I'm going to move up to the top here and hit enter. Then I'm going to cheat by grabbing that little formula. In fact, I can grab the whole line, just hit copy, and move down here and say, while you're at it, actually we can just do those and say paste. What it's doing then is it's allowing my revenue to grow 2%. It's allowing my cost of goods sold to grow 2% per year. I'm going to highlight and underline. And then as I move down to my 125, this is just a formula. Oh, well, I can just pull that one across. And it's just taking my revenue minus my cost of goods sold, and it's growing. Well, let's see, my fixed overhead, I can assume that nothing is locked in by contract, so I'm going to copy that and paste fixed overhead. It's now growing by 2%. By the way, if you get out of control here, you will get the wrong answer, because people will then put their brain in autopilot and say, oh, we're just doing that all the rest of the way down. We're not doing it anywhere else, actually. Thank you very much. Because depreciation is straight line. It's based on this number. We look at historical numbers. We don't care about inflation at that point, and therefore this one is going to be handled completely differently. I'm going to say equal that number, boom, finished. I'm going to pull that the rest of the way across. That one's been formatted too, by the way. Yeah, I know. And then this one is a formula to come up with operating profit. I'm going to pull that one across. Taxes, formula based on what's in row 20. I'm going to pull that one across. Net profit is a formula. Pull that one across. And now I'm going to actually add a couple of rows. Insert. And I'm going to say change in working capital. And for this one, I'm going to say is equal to this number minus that number. Just seeing how much more I have to invest in my inventory. So I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to scroll this up so we can see it easier. Pull this all the way across. And then with my operating cash flow, now notice this one is also a formula. So I'm going to pull this one across once and tweak it, because I also have to, because this is a cash flow, and I'm going to be investing $120 more in inventory. I have to say that I'm investing it by saying negative, subtract 120, and my cash flow went up a little. Didn't go up quite as much, but that's because I'm taking into account the adjustment to my inventory over time. Just pull that one across. It should be picking up all of the right things, including subtracting out this adjustment to working capital. Let me hit escape there. One last thing to adjust is my inventory. You're saying, what? This is terminal cash flows. This is when we sell off the inventory, all the inventory at the end, we get back whatever is out there. The problem is it's not 6,000 anymore. It's actually 6,624, because we've had 2% inflation for 5 years. And at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of these things, the entire table, decision table I'll call it, skip a couple of columns, and hit enter. And you may have to adjust your columns and such. As I've already mentioned, I already did this before. So we're going to hit equal in the initial cash flow. Go up and grab the exact same number. These are in time $0. They should be. I hit enter. My operating cash flows, however, they've actually been changed. They've been changed to operating cash flow. Enter and pull across. And then T5, my terminal cash flow, I'm going to say equals the amount of inventory that should be there at the end of year 5. I'm going to hit enter. And we have our 176,000 in time $0, 68,662 in time $1, 69,804 in time $2, etc. What's interesting is when you compare it to the stuff that happened before, we really had 3 numbers we were dealing with. That one, this one, which repeated 4 times, and that one in the end. What we have now is a completely different set of numbers all the way across. And note, they're growing. And they're growing because of inflation. Also interesting to note is net present value has actually gone up. Internal rate of return has also gone up. MIRR has also gone up. And so I guess the real takeaway here is the one thing that adjusting for inflation typically will do is increase all of these across the board. Now, many companies, because of that, they say let's build that in as sort of a conservative estimate, realizing that when we include inflation in there, net present value, internal rate of return, MIRR will all go up slightly, which is true as long as we just have a negative in T0 and everything else is positive. Then these will actually all go up as we take into account inflation. Now at this point we need to go take a look at how this affects replacement decisions. Now, replacement decision. The replacement decision we're going to do the same sort of thing with. We're going to try to remember which ones are not adjusted for inflation. This one's a little different just because we have, now nothing happens again, let me scroll back up here. Nothing happens during T0. We have to adjust nothing. The only things we adjust are operating cash flows and perhaps terminal cash flow, although this one, the terminal cash flow, has everything to do with depreciation. Those don't adjust for inflation, so we don't need to worry about those. This $1,000 in salvage of new equipment, if we say we're assuming that's what we get, period, and we've already taken into account the adjustment, then we don't need to worry about that. But most of the rest of this stuff, you may think, wow, this is going to be a mess. But again, just to show you, as we have now eliminated anything here from being adjusted, we've eliminated this from being adjusted. The only thing we're going to be adjusting on this one, therefore, is the operating cash flow. As we look at the operating cash flow, this has to do with the depreciation. It does not get adjusted. This one has to do with this is the operating earnings, so that one will be adjusted. These are all depreciation. They don't get adjusted, and from there on down, we pretty much just don't do any adjusting at all. So what I'm going to do, just to make my life a little easier, is copy these because I want to keep the original, move next door, and paste. Everything is now, actually that works. I'm going to widen that one out so we can see it a little easier. So the only one that we're adjusting is this one. So again, we're going to be saying this one is in T1. And therefore that one actually is going to be 75,000 times 1.02. Wow. Except I really needed to put an equal sign in before that, or it won't do what I want it to do. Now I'm going to say equals that thing times 1.02. And we'll just keep those popping across. Now we've adjusted all of these for inflation. These we have not adjusted, and we shouldn't. That has automatically adjusted all of these for inflation. That will adjust all of these automatically for inflation, which will adjust all of these automatically for inflation, which will adjust all of these automatically for inflation. I guess the very short answer to this point was, yeah, we're finished. I'm just going to highlight here. We're going to cheat again. And I'm going to just hit paste. It's going to give me garbage until we fix some things. So I'm going to say equals 39,600, and this one needs to be equal to the 660 again, and we should be finished at that point. I'm just going to widen this out so we can see it. Again, we're seeing the same thing with inflation. If inflation hits both the revenue and the expenses equally, then what we should be seeing is, if we were going to accept that net present value project, or the project based on NPV, we should really accept it now. And so in some ways it doesn't adjust the outcome you might think, but there are times when this gets really, really, really close, that making an adjustment for inflation may actually put the cash flows that much higher, and will put that over the adopt that project. The problem with doing that, of course, is that means things had better go exactly as planned. And the problem with that is, well, as Yoda put it in Star Wars, always uncertain the future. And so, yeah, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so we hope we're right, but we don't know if we are or not.